Good evening, and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum at the Institute of Politics. My name is Safina Chiswick-Singh, and I'm a sophomore at the college studying government and astrophysics, and I'm a member of the JFK Jr. Forum Committee. Before we begin, please note the exit doors, which are located on both the park side and JFK Street side. In the event of an emergency, walk to the exit closest to you and congregate in the JFK Park. Please also take a moment now to silence your cell phones. And join me in welcoming the Director of the Institute of Politics and Professor of Public Policy at Harvard Kennedy School, Seti Warren.
Good evening, and welcome to the JFK Jr. Forum for tonight's event, the Václav Havel Lecture on Human Rights, Civil Society, and Democracy. We are honored that it will be delivered this year by the President of the Czech Republic, His Excellency Petr Pavel. We'd like to give special thanks to Harvard's Minda D. Gunzburg Center for European Studies for co-sponsoring tonight's event. Stewarded by the Center for European Studies, the Havel Lecture was launched in 2024 with the aim to advance the legacy of its namesake, the epochal Czech defender of civil liberties and its first president, by convening leaders, scholars, and students at Harvard to exchange knowledge on freedom, human rights, and civic engagement. We welcome and thank the Czech president for his presence here today. We also thank Ludek Sekura for his vision and support of the creation of the Havel Lecture. 30 years ago in 1995, President Václav Havel received an honorary degree at Harvard and gave Harvard's commencement address. Mr. Michael Żontowski accompanied Havel on that visit and today serves as an advisor to President Pavel. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Żontowski to the stage for a few words.
Yes. As you've just heard, 30 years ago, Václav Havel, playwright, essayist, human rights defender, prisoner of conscience, and at that time president of the Czech Republic, visited these hallowed grounds to deliver a commencement speech to the Harvard class of 1995. In the waning euphoria of the end of the Cold War, Havel came to deliver the message that we were now living in a single global civilization increasingly governed by the ideas of democracy, respect for human rights, the rule of law, and the laws of the marketplace, in many ways reminiscent of the writings of Francis Fukuyama, who earned his doctorate in political science at Harvard. At the same time, Havel commented on the emerging process of ethnic strife, identity struggles, and clashes between cultures and religions, echoing some of the observations of another renowned Harvard scholar, Samuel Huntington. The only way in which these conflicting trends could be reconciled and the world saved from the threats it was facing, Havel said, was a radical renewal of our sense of responsibility, applying to individuals, groups, cultures, countries, and superpowers alike, with those with the greatest power having the greatest responsibility. That message, I believe, is as relevant today as it was then. Well, in closing, allow me a personal remark. In 1995, as the then Czech ambassador to the United States, I was privileged to accompany Havel on his trip to Harvard and watch him receive his honorary degree and deliver his commencement address on the radical renewal of responsibility. So you will understand why 30 years later, with deep gratitude to the Harvard Kennedy Forum, the Minda, the Gunzburg Center for European Studies, and the Sekura Foundation, who deserve the credit for launching the annual Václav Havel Lecture on Human Rights, Civil Society, and Democracy, I feel doubly privileged and not a little moved to be here with President Petr Pavel, another distinguished leader of my country, to hear him speak on what responsibility means in the troubled world of today. Mr. President.
Thank you, Michael. Following President Pavel's remarks tonight, the conversation will be moderated with him by Professor Grzegorz Ekiert. Professor Ekiert is the Laurence A. Tisch Professor of Government at Harvard University, Director of the Davis Center for Russian and Eurasian Studies, the Senior Scholar at the Harvard Academy for International and Area Studies. He's a resident faculty member at the Minda D. Gunzburg Center for European Studies, where he serves as director from 2012 to 2023. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our featured guests this evening. The President of the Czech Republic, Petr Pavel, has many years of military experience, ascending from a special purpose airborne reconnaissance platoon leader to the chief of the General Staff of the Czech Armed Services and Forces. Notably, he chaired the NATO Military Committee from 2015 to 2018, following solidifying his experience and leadership within the international defense community. Throughout his career, he held various positions, such as commander of Special Forces Brigade or the deputy military representative of the Czech Republic to the EU. After retiring from the Army, President Pavel continued his dedication to public service, engaging in civil society initiatives as a freelance lecturer in defense, security, and international relations. In 2023, he won the presidential election as an independent candidate nominated by citizens. We are so honored to have him here this evening to share his thoughts and engage in conversation with you. Please join me in welcoming President Pavel to the stage.
Good afternoon to all of you. It's great to see you so many, but it makes me a little bit nervous, but I hope that we'll make it together. Distinguished Director of the Center of European Studies, Director of Harvard Kennedy Forum, faculty, students, friends. It is really a great honor to be invited to speak to Harvard University, one of the most prominent institutions of higher learning in the world. In a way, my appearance here today is also a small repayment of an old debt. In the mid-17th century, John Winthrop Jr., son of one of the founders of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, is said to have invited the Czech educator and exile Johannes Amos Comenius to become the first president of Harvard College. It was a little bit smaller at that time. Comenius, whom we know in our lands as Jan Amos Komenský, was drawn by the offer, but chose instead to help reform Swedish school system at the request of Queen Christina. We will never know who lost more in this missed opportunity. But since then, Harvard has held a special place in Czech memory, and I am glad that the feeling has been mutual. 30 years ago, my predecessor, Václav Havel, came here to receive an honorary degree and to deliver the commencement speech to the Harvard class of 1995. Today, I am pleased to be accompanied by Michal Žantovský, whom you heard already, former ambassador to the United States, Havel's close collaborator, and author of his acclaimed biography. In his speech, Havel spoke about two themes central to his thinking: the rise of a global civilization and our responsibility for its future. I want to reflect on how both of these themes have evolved, how the promise of a shared civilization has become connected, and how the idea of our responsibility should be understood and shared in new ways. In 1995, war was raging in the former Yugoslavia, an exception to what many believed was an era of democratic advance and growing international order. Havel reminded world leaders, especially in the United States, of their duty to help stop the fighting. He said, quote, "It is obvious that those who have the greatest power and influence also bear the greatest responsibility. Like it or not, the United States now probably bears the greatest responsibility for the direction of our world will take." End of quote. In making this appeal, Havel was formed by the central trauma of 20th century Czech history, and that is Munich Agreement of 1938, when Czechoslovakia was forced at gunpoint to surrender much of its territory to Nazi Germany, without a seat at the table and against its will. Although the United States was not a party to the Munich Agreement, Havel recalled a letter sent on 26 September 1938 by President Roosevelt to the leaders of Czechoslovakia, Britain, and France. In it, he urged them to reach some kind of a settlement with Hitler. Looking back in 1995, Havel said, "Had he not deceived himself and the whole world into believing that an agreement could be made with this madman, perhaps the Second World War need not have happened." But Havel's appeal to the United States was never one-sided. He was equally clear about our own responsibility for the state of the world, near and far, even at the risk of becoming unpopular at home. Only a year after the Velvet Revolution of 1989, and long before joining NATO, Czechoslovakia entered the US-led coalition of 42 nations to expel Iraqi forces from Kuwait in Operation Desert Storm. Our determination to help stop the bloodshed in former Yugoslavia led not only to Havel's appeals to President Clinton to act, but also to the deployment of Czech troops in the UNPROFOR, IFOR, and SFOR peacekeeping missions that helped bring peace at last. The same spirit guided us after the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. Czechia was among the first to call for invoking Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, and soon after contributed to the international forces in Afghanistan. For 20 years, from 2002 until 2021, Czech soldiers took part in ISAF and resolute support operations to keep terrorist groups at bay. This is a reminder, above all to ourselves, that we must always take our own words about responsibility and our commitments to it seriously. 30 years after Havel's speech, the world is not in better shape. In fact, it appears that we lived in one of the most peaceful periods of modern history not so long ago. In 2005, armed conflicts claimed fewer lives than at any time since the Second World War. Today, the trend has reversed. Last year, there were over 60 state-based conflicts, the highest number since 1946. And new wars continue to erupt, from Ukraine to the Middle East. Russia's war, raging to the east of my country, has already cost many more lives than the conflict in former Yugoslavia and revived scenes reminiscent of the First World War. Czechia has responded accordingly. Confronted with direct threats from Russian officials against the West and horrified by the slaughter in Ukraine, we have recognized that in the euphoria of newfound freedom after the Cold War, we may have taken European security for granted and our own responsibility too lightly. Today, we meet the NATO target of spending at least 2% of GDP on defense, and following this year's summit in The Hague, we have committed ourselves to raising that figure to 5% by 2035. We were also among the first to aid Ukraine after the invasion of February 2022. Almost immediately, Czechia emptied its military stores to deliver badly needed equipment, including heavy armor. Government agencies, NGOs, and individual citizens have contributed hundreds of millions US dollars in humanitarian aid, food, medicine, and we hosted over 400,000 refugees from Ukraine, more per capita than any other country. Furthermore, we have provided our support to the Ukrainians on the ground, in Kyiv, in the regions close to the front line, Dnipro or Kharkiv. Czechia has actively supported all 18 rounds of EU sanctions against Russia and continues to advocate for more. We launched the Ammunition Initiative, which has delivered so far up to 3.5 million rounds of large caliber ammunition to Ukraine's defenders and remains a crucial supplier. And yet, together with the contributions of like-minded countries, including first and foremost the United States, this is still not enough. Under Vladimir Putin, Russia has become a single-minded aggressor and a war economy. Make no mistake, his goals go far beyond the current front lines or even Ukraine itself. He seeks nothing less than to overturn the post-Cold War international order and to repair what he calls the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century, the fall of the Soviet Union. If Putin succeeds, it will not only mean the restoration of a Russian sphere of influence in Central and Eastern Europe. It would also spell the end of freedom, liberty, human rights, and dignity for more than 100 million people. We acknowledge and appreciate President Trump's efforts to stop the killing and bring peace to the bloodbath of Eastern Europe. At the same time, we note with regret that neither his good faith nor that of President Zelensky and the European leaders has been reciprocated by Russia. President Putin has no real interest in negotiating peace. His goal remains to force Ukraine into submission and to show to the whole world that Russia cannot be defeated. It falls to all of us who believe in freedom to ensure that this doesn't happen. If we preserve our unity, so clearly demonstrated at the recent Transatlantic and European meetings, we have the means to do so, even without direct confrontation with Russia. First, we must continue to support Ukraine's armed forces with weapons and equipment, including air defense systems and investments in Ukraine's own long-range capabilities, allowing it to respond to Russia's indiscriminate attacks. As President Trump rightly observed, it is very hard, if not impossible, to win a war without attacking an invader's country. It's like a great team in sports that has a fantastic defense, but is not allowed to play offense. Second, we must tighten our coordinate sanctions on the aggressor, while closing the loopholes that allow Russia to circumvent them through third countries. Each of us has our homework to do in this respect, and we intend to deliver on it. Third, we must be ready to put in place lasting security arrangements for Ukraine once the fighting stops. The strongest foundation will always be Ukraine's own army, capable, well-armed, and resilient. But that alone is not enough. Ukraine will also need reassurance from allied forces on the ground, provided by a coalition of the willing. And I want to stress, American support will remain crucial, not as a substitute for European responsibility, but as a backstop and anchor of European security. And, in fact, the whole Western world security. In this respect, Czechs support such a peace-restoring and later peacekeeping mission. As in all other walks of life, responsibility is in the end demonstrated by not talking the talk, but walking the walk. Russia and China are challenging the rules, and the international community has fractured. The result is plain to see: more wars, more violence, and contested world order. Václav Havel once appealed to America to shoulder responsibility as the mightiest power of his time. He also knew that responsibility was ours as well. Today, the balance has shifted further. We Europeans, at first taken aback by the speed and scale of the change, are finally getting our act together and assume as much responsibility as the United States. And in our part of the world, even more. This is not only right, it is necessary. Havel spoke of responsibility as a moral imperative. That remains true. But today, responsibility cannot be understood in moral terms alone. It is also a matter of self-interest. Ukraine is the place where this is tested. If Russia can tear up borders and treaties there, then none of us can feel secure, as all current and potential aggressors will learn the lesson. That is why Europe must shoulder more, and that is why American support is not a charity, but a vital investment in our shared security. We are no longer living in the optimistic climate of the 90s. The idea of a single global civilization has given way to a contested international order, some might even say disorder. Authoritarian powers speak the language of peace, sovereignty, dignity, dialogue, and multilateralism. We saw this at the recent Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit and later at the military parade in Beijing, where rivals of the democratic world stood side by side. But their actions tell a whole different story. One that rejects the very principles we stand for: the UN Charter, international law, and the peaceful resolution of conflicts. Let's not play into their hands. Wherever we step back, they are eager to step in. This is the reality we face. The alliance of democracies must answer the alliance of autocracies, not only with military strength, but with unity of purpose and clarity of vision. And in that effort, there is no more natural ally for the United States than Europe. If we stand firm together, we have every chance not only to preserve our security, but to renew the promise of freedom and dignity in this century. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for this very important speech. You outlined the challenges we face today, and it's paradoxical that Havel's ideas, which we thought applied to all times, are as alive today as ever. I'm thinking about, living in truth, which suddenly becomes to all countries, including this one, something which is a great challenge. Now, thank you so much for all of you for coming here. I would like to thank Professor Margeliot, our provost, and Professor Jeremy Weistin, the dean of the Kennedy School, and Ambassador Żantowski as well, and all of you. I think Europe is an important place, and it's a very dangerous moment, not only for transatlantic relations, but also for Europe itself. Before I open the floor, I would like to ask you a couple of questions. Probably there is no better leader in Europe today who can speak about the NATO with the authority you can do it. So the first Secretary General of NATO, the British secretary, said once that NATO was created to keep Americans in, to keep the Russians out, and to keep the Germans down. Now, it seems that we are living 60 years or from that moment precisely through exactly the same dilemma. How to keep Americans in, how to keep the Russians out. And I think the Germans are very happy being down, or have been. So how to keep the Germans really, taking the right place in European defense and European politics. What's your idea of NATO now? What are the biggest challenges NATO faces? Can Europe defend itself if Americans are out?
That's a question for an hour lecture, but I will try to be shorter. First, as I know NATO from within for approximately 10 years of service at different positions, including the top military post, I will always defend it knowing that there is a lot of justified criticism. Because it's the institution that brought together now 32 nations and took on board more than 40 partner nations. And all these 70 countries are willing to discuss, to negotiate difficulties, and to come to an agreement without confrontation. That's a great achievement in itself. Second, it provided Europe and North America with a united system of collective defense based on Article 5 of North Atlantic Treaty, which translates one for all for one. And it also gave all these nations a number of platforms for sharing information, being it in the situation in the airspace, where there exists integrated air defense and missile defense system, integrated intelligence, strategic communications, and many others. And all that created an organization that protects altogether around 1 billion people and comprises about 50% of global GDP. That's one point of view. The other is that after the Second World War, and especially after the end of the Cold War, many European countries realized that there is no more threat in Europe. So they focused their spending on social issues and development, while the United States remained globally engaged. So for the United States, there was no reason to cut military expenditures, as it was for European countries. And over time, the division of labor or burden sharing has evolved very negatively for the United States, from original 50-50 to up to 75% on the United States and only 25% on Europeans. Number of times American leaders, and I remember President Bush Jr. and then President Obama, were reminding us in Europe, grow up. But they were doing it probably too politely, with a lot of I'd say, diplomatic language. And it was understood as a reminder, okay, we will think about it. And then President Trump in his first presidency came to a first summit that he attended, and I was sitting next to him like I'm sitting next to you. And he said to the forum, whoever is not paying enough will not be defended. You get it? And suddenly everyone was shocked because we were not used to that kind of behavior. But the message behind it was absolutely right. And that means that we have to equally share the burden, equally share the responsibility. And this is what NATO started very quickly doing. So now most of the countries are spending required 2% or more. We agreed to spend even more to provide more capabilities. But still, the level of reliance on the United States is there. If we want to overcome it, I believe there are nice and good ways how to do it in close coordination with the American command in Europe, where we can plan for transition of responsibilities in what we call in military terms strategic enablers, and to develop European ones, and to free hands to the United States to act anywhere around the globe. And for Europe to be able to handle even a bigger operation on our own, preferably with Americans on board, and if they decide not to participate, to be able to do it on our own. I think this is the way we go, but of course, the more we coordinate, the more we plan it together, the less we push each other to the corner, the better result for both sides.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We are all aware of a number of provocations Russians accomplished over the period of the last couple of weeks. And you advocated a very strong response to those provocations. You know, the Czech Republic sent the drone fighting helicopters to Poland immediately after the intrusion, and you advocated that Russian jets, which violate the airspace of NATO, should be shut down. I wonder, and that's the question, whether this will deter the Russians or will provoke the Russians to behave in a much more aggressive way?
Well, if someone who's not following these issues on a daily basis would hear me saying that let's shoot down a Russian airplane, he would probably think that it's just another bloodthirsty ex-general. But I have to say, Russia understands the language of power and determination. They respect those who stand for their own rights and who are able to defend themselves. It was clearly proven by a number of incidents where Russia was testing NATO a number of times, but some of us probably may remember shooting down a Russian bomber in 2015 over a very tiny part of Turkish territory that goes like an appendix to Syria. But before that, Russians did a number of incursions into Turkish territory that were not neglected but not answered. And then President Erdogan most probably understood that this will go on and on until there is a decisive signal to Russians that they have to stop. So they shut down one of their planes. Many people in NATO at that time, and I was chairing NATO Military Committee, were very afraid that now we will have to invoke Article 5 and there will be war between NATO and Russia. Nothing happened, because Russians knew that they made a mistake. And they know it when they send drones to Poland. They know it when they cross Estonian airspace. They know it when they go into the airspace of Romania. But they were doing it over Syria when there were a joint environment where Russians, Americans, and many others were operating in some coordination. But what Russians were doing, they were flying and locking weapon radar on American planes. Locking a weapon radar is an act of aggression. When I was talking to American pilots, they told me we had no choice. They had better planes that we had. So they would most probably win if we started. We didn't want to provoke, so we didn't react. But it was over a territory of third state. If something like that happens over our sovereign airspace, we simply have to act. Because otherwise Russians would continue testing the limits of our own willingness to defend, limits of international law. They simply need to know where are the borders. Mm-hmm. And we have to show them in a very determined way what is allowed and what is not.
I can't resist and ask you a question about Czech domestic politics. As some of you know, there are elections to the Czech parliament coming in 2 weeks. And unfortunately, the liberal coalition government of Prime Minister Fiala doesn't have good support at that moment, and probably Andrej Babiš and his ANO party are going to win election. Is it a danger that Czech Republic will move in populist, anti-European direction, the way Slovakia and Hungary have been moving?
I think it will be irresponsible if I say there is no risk, because we will have most probably a very different setup of the government. There are now up to 7 parties that are eligible to make it to the parliament, and the strongest of them is more or less central populist movement of Andrej Babiš. He is not anti-EU or anti-NATO. He understands that the only way how we can guarantee our security and prosperity is within these two organizations. The risk comes from his potential coalition partners, because none of the current government parties expressed the will to go in coalition with him. So what remains are parties that are either openly extremist or close to. And some of them, or one of them, was very clear to express their will to call a referendum on staying or leaving NATO and EU. So if they come to a government, we may see some trend to change the current course. But as you said, we still have 2 weeks to go. And I hope that our population will understand pretty well what is at stake. That we cannot allow any experiment and risking our security with a referendum that may end up the same way as did Brexit referendum, which brought a lot of frustration to a number of British people. So I think in the end we will probably not see any significant change of foreign policy course.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to broaden the conversation now and open it to our students and all of you. You know the routines. There are 4 mics, and if you would like to ask Mr. President a question, line up behind those mics. Please remember that a question is a sentence with the question mark in the end, and try to limit the comments as much as possible so we have more time for Mr. President to respond to as many questions as possible. So do I see light in my... any questions? Yes, please.
Yes. President Pavel, it's an honor to have you here, and I really enjoyed the speech and the conversation. Given that this is the Václav Havel lecture, I was thinking about Havel's greengrocer, who puts a sign up saying "Workers of the World Unite," even if he doesn't believe it, just to avoid social ostracism, to say, "I am obedient, please don't harass me." And I was wondering if in modern times, domestically, internationally, anywhere that you see this exists, where people say things that they don't necessarily believe in order to avoid harassment, to say, "I fit in, please look elsewhere."
We probably all know the expression political correctness that prevents us quite often understanding things that are quite obvious, but we have a tendency to avoid saying it directly. I don't have that problem. As an ex-military, I'm really not burdened by over political correctness. But at the same time, as a president, you have to weigh your words. Because being very straightforward would probably not help what you want to achieve. So I always distinguish between being, let's say, politically incorrect or rude from being open. I prefer, and especially with friends, very open language. And whenever we have a difficult issue with an ally or a partner country, I always start with a little warning at the beginning that I may say things that will not be received with joy, and they are meant sincerely, because friends should tell each other sometimes even unpleasant truths. And obviously it's not easy always, because not everyone is tuned to listen to unpleasant truths, even if he or she knows that they are meant sincerely. But in that case, you have to find a way how to do it, not to lose yourself, but to tell what you want to say.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. See if you can hear me. Good evening, Mr. President. Dobrý večer, pane prezidente. I really appreciate how beyond your political campaign, for your presidential political campaign, you have stayed in touch with the everyday citizens, how you go beyond the capital, Prague, you go to the regions, and you keep asking people. So I appreciate it. It's very inspirational. And my question to you today is about what do you think, or what do you consider are the top 3 features you see in a 21st century version of European integration, multilateral institutions, and global collaboration without the explicit support of the US? Thank you.
Well, frankly, I don't even want to consider an option doing something without the US. I believe that, and I mentioned that in my address, democracies are natural allies. And wherever I go, and I visited 3 of IP4 partners to NATO in Australia, New Zealand, Japan over the last 10 months. I had a talk with the Korean president yesterday. I believe that even beyond the geographical distance, we are much closer than we usually think. We have the same interests. We share the same values. We should coordinate very closely. And all of that not just to increase the camp of democratic countries, but because we are getting under pressure from different kind of authoritarian regimes. And we see them coordinating. We see them striking strategic partnerships like Russia, China, and then they together challenge the global system in which we live for decades, actually since the Second World War. And that's why I believe that despite differences, we should always try to speak one language within democratic camp. When it comes to current frictions on tariffs, for example, between Europe and the United States, I think we can all resolve that by negotiation. We don't have to impose tariffs both ways, because if there is an imbalance, and there is an imbalance, let's address it. Let's sit down, because as an allies we can argue, and we have the culture to come up to an agreement. So I would always say, let's use all tools available and let's always try to negotiate, make an agreement, go together instead of finding alternatives and bypassing any country that might seem difficult at some historical moment.
A gentleman on the mic here.
I appreciate the speech you made, Mr. President. I was wondering, since you discussed the pivotal moment in our history of this potential contest between autocracies and democracies, whether you see a more expanded role for NATO, perhaps in the Indo-Pacific, as you mentioned, coordinating with various, the IP4 and the Republic of Korea, for example?
Quite frankly, not at the short or mid-term, because NATO is primarily a North Atlantic Europe organization of collective defense that cannot so easily stretch globally. We were using language in NATO that NATO should be globally aware, not globally engaged. For that purpose, we have partnerships. And I think the partnership with IP4 countries, with a number of other countries around the globe, gives us a lot of opportunities how to coordinate our measures. Obviously, when we talk about security, we cannot think about it separately, European region, North Atlantic region, or Indo-Pacific, because whatever happens in any part of the world will immediately have an effect globally. We know that through South China Sea, about 50 up to 60% of global goods is running through the sea lines in international waters. If this very important vein is cut, then we will feel it everywhere. That's why we have to be interested in what is going on there. But we will not necessarily be militarily engaged. But given the nature of partnership may stretch from consultations up to military cooperation. So it will be always matter of discussion and agreement with partner country and NATO, how far we can go with that cooperation. But I really don't think that NATO should expand beyond Europe and North Atlantic at this point, because that would probably prove counterproductive. We see what kind of difficulty made it for Ukraine to express their sovereign wish to become a member of NATO. And there are other countries like Russia who would assert that they have their sovereign sphere of influence. And they would argue that some countries cannot become part of different organizations. But really for that purpose, I would use partnership as a much more flexible format, allowing full scope of activities.
So let's return to the first mic, please.
Yes, thank you for coming. Thank you for also the courage you've displayed in the context of our times. And welcome to Boston. My question is, I think Donald Trump is many things, but complicated is not necessarily one of them. He's, in my mind, very much a real estate developer at heart, and so he seems to understand if you can marry land with capital, you can generate investment returns. So with that in mind, and in the context of his recent signaling of renewed support for Ukraine, do you think there's an opportunity now to develop a model by which Eastern NATO states could contribute land or land rights, or maybe the establishment of some sort of a economic development corridor that runs through them and into Ukraine? Do you think that would be something worth exploring and have any possibility of success to basically entrench the United States interests in the region and act as somewhat of a backdoor to the security question that we're all wrangling with?
I will answer this question by giving you an information about one proposal that I am pushing through for more than 2 years now. And that's based on a very positive experience that we all made after the Second World War with Marshall Plan for Europe. I was suggesting let's do something similar for Ukraine. it will be beneficial from many points of view. First, we will be well coordinated from United States through Europe up to all willing countries to contribute. Ukraine is supported by Japan, by Korea, so why not to give them a chance to be part of reconstruction? Second, we would cover all the areas, not leaving any blank spots or allowing that we will all pay attention to the same area or functional area. Third, such an arrangement, if it is well organized and transparent and overseen, would exclude to a large extent potential for corruption. It is always there, not only on the side of Ukraine, but also on all the sides. So I believe that coming up with something like Marshall Plan for Ukraine would give Ukraine a clear idea that we count on them, we will not let them go. And it will also give all of us a sense of transparency and vision for the future to plan our own resources. And it would also be possible to use the process as a preparation for accession to European Union. Because by meeting the criteria of Marshall Plan, they would actually meet the criteria of EU accession. This is the way I believe that we could take everyone on board, at the same time to provide maximum possible effect to Ukraine and share the burden among all of us. Not to compete, not to quarrel, not to leave somebody out.
Yeah, we have time for a few more questions, please.
My name is Paul Tumanaro. I'm a Master's of Business student here, and I hail from Chicago and Illinois, where I worked hard for equal rights for same-sex marriage. And I was wondering, I know that you guys have made some progress in this fashion, but being an adoptee myself, I feel like it is really important for these couples to be able to adopt children. What progress is being made on that, and what do you think is stopping it?
Is the question about the children adopted for the... Yeah. Okay, we discussed this issue yesterday in New York at a special conference on adopted children. I would say I would never expect that something like that may ever happen in the civilized world in 21st century. It reminds so much the Middle Ages and some barbarians, because stealing the children in an effort to re-educate them, to indoctrinate and militarize them, is simply something so brutal and disgusting that it should be renounced by everyone. There is a great effort to bring all abducted children back to Ukraine and to prevent further abuse of these children. It's not just a discussion or the words. Many of these children were brought back. More than 1,500 made it back to Ukraine, but there are still several thousand in Russia. And I think, regardless if we are from NATO or EU or any other country, regardless of what kind of relationship we have with Russia, something like that simply must not happen. And we should be all united in creating pressure on Russia on releasing all the remaining children to get back home.
They may not have been exactly the question you asked, but the answer was incredibly important. Please.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Louis, and I'm from Scotland. You were just talking about the elections in the Czech Republic coming up, and I was wondering how your status as an independent politician affects your decision-making in comparison to other heads of states, such as Prime Minister Starmer or President Trump. And
Well, in my country, it was not so common for independent candidates to run for the office of president. In modern history, we had so far only 4 presidents. One was Václav Havel, already mentioned. He came out of a revolutionary movement. So he was, to some extent, pushed to the office by the people. And then we had 2 presidents who were representatives of strong political parties, with all the background, all the support, all the funding. But our constitution allows individual candidates to run for the office. And I decided to do that when I realized that probably the strongest candidate for the position is the leader of the populist party, already mentioned, Andrej Babiš. And I simply believe that that might be my last offer of service to my country to prevent that. And I was able to gather sufficient support, not only from population, but also from fundraising to run for the office, and it was successful.
We are slowly moving to the end of our session. Please, question.
Hello, Mr. President. Thank you. It's an honor to ask my question tonight. My first question was about the international legal system. I was curious about what you would respond to someone who were to argue that the international system as it currently stands is fundamentally illegitimate and unsustainable because its foundations date from a time when a lot of states, which are now sovereign, did not yet have sovereignty and therefore didn't really have a say in its creation. And if you agree with that statement in any way, what you think should be done to address this concern which exists in the world. And then a related question is, do you think democracy is suitable for any country? And to what extent can the Western world seek to spread democracy beyond its borders? Thank you.
The issue of international system, legal, financial, and security has been questioned for some time. And we see that especially now this forming coalition of authoritarian countries is coming up with a proposal to change the system to better reflect their needs and aspirations. To some extent, the argument is right, and as you said, the situation is different than it was in 1945, and the institutions that exist should reflect that. But instead of removing them and replacing by something completely different, I would argue let's adapt the institutions, because in my view, they are working. We may think different things about the UN, how ineffective it is in resolving current security issues, but it is extremely effective in a number of other issues, cultural, human rights, and many others. So why to destroy something that is functioning? International financial system is also functioning, probably more in favor of Western countries than the countries of so-called Global South, as they suggest. But I believe we can negotiate adaptation of that system, how to bring on board countries that are, or regions that are underrepresented, how to make the system fairer, because we don't want confrontation. We don't want another conflicts over financial system. I believe it's much wiser to sit down and negotiate what can we do to adjust it, so that those who feel underrepresented or harmed by the system are more comfortable with a new setup, to make it a compromise from both sides. This makes sense to me, but of course it's quite difficult because by adjusting the system, it might be quite inconvenient for us. But if the alternative is a conflict, I think compromise is much better than new conflict over financial system or legal system.
You know, I'm afraid that we are out of time, and we need President Pavel to come back to answer the questions you were not able to ask. But please join me to thank President Pavel for